This is a storytelling poll. It specifically tells a story about Raven stealing the sun. Raven is one of the most important characters in Northwest Coast mythology. He is a trickster, a hero, and a cultural hero. And I do want you to take a look at a very, very brief reading on tricksters that I've included with the reading section. Tricksters are curious and playful, but also sly. They are spirits. They have supernatural powers, and they usually can change form, and that's going to be true for Raven. There are multiple versions of the story of the way Raven is going to steal the sun, and just one of those versions, he recognizes that the sun, along with the moon and the stars, are being held in the box by a chief. The chief has a beautiful daughter. Raven will find a way to impregnate the daughter by turning himself into a pine needle, which she's going to drink in her water. She's going to have a child. That child will be Raven human, but it will really be Raven. And the grandfather is going to want to delight the grandson and give him everything that he wants to play with. And I'm thinking you already can figure out the outcome of this. Or the Raven child is going to want to play with the box that has the sun, the moon, and the stars in it. And ultimately, grandfather will allow the kid to do that, the little Raven child. And at that point, Raven will turn back into a bird, steal the sun, the moon, the stars, fly up the chimney to get away. And as he does that, his coat will become permanently black, black like the Raven we have today. And he manages to give us light of the sun, the moon, and also the stars. He sounds like he is a good spiritual character, helping human beings, and sometimes he does, but also he is the figure that gave us death. So he can be helpful, he can be harmful, but he is always important in terms of mythology. What you're looking at in the detail on the left is the depiction of the sun right here, and it is being held in the talons of Raven, in the nails of Raven, who's located at the very, very top of the pole. Let me take us to a diagram. If you go to visit this particular pole, which is located in Alaska today, you will find the sign next to it, and it'll make it a little bit easier to read. It shows us Raven, it shows us the sun, and then right here under the sun is the chief's daughter. And then on the hat of grandfather is the kind of child, Raven, the Raven human, who is going to trick grandfather. And grandfather is the one who once upon a time had the box that had the sun, the moon, and the stars in it. I would like you to at least have a passing knowledge of this pole because it's located at the University of Pennsylvania. It's in the museum. It's in the entranceway, in fact, as you go in the kind of side door of the museum. It's about 25 feet tall, so it's not the largest pole, but it is truly an incredible pole, and I think it illustrates some of the most important concepts of these. I'm going to call it a crest pole. It was created in the late 19th century in British Columbia. And if you look up at the very, very top of this, you're going to see a human being. And that human being is the individual who's our kind of heroic ancestor. And if you look at his hat, it has several woven rings on it, which we're going to be able to find on a number of crest hats that are worn and displayed in the Northwest Coast. Each of those represents status and value within society. Take a look at my videos that I have included on the frog crest hat, and I'll talk a little bit about those woven rings at the top. But that's clearly one of our ancestral figures. I'm going to call him a superhero. And then underneath him is Raven. So the family line is again connecting to Raven. But underneath Raven, and this is what I'd really like you to be able to see here, there is an image of, excuse me, Baby Bear. And we're getting a look at Baby Bear right here. But I'd like you to see that Baby Bear's ears are actually Raven's feet. So what we have is a clear depiction of transformation, the way one figure can flow into another figure. And I'd like you to think just for a moment back in the day when animals and humans could change form. So it is about the fluidity of the divisions, the boundaries between us. It references transformation and interconnection. That is at the heart of mythology of the Northwest Coast. We can see more of this with Mama Bear. This is Baby Bear who's tucked between the ears of Mama Bear. This is Mama Bear's face. Note if you go over here, you're going to see Mama Bear's long tongue is actually coming down and morphing into sea lion. One animal form becomes another. It kind of grows out of another in a very, very organic way, referencing this fluidity between animal forms and also between animal and human forms that forms the foundation of the belief system of the Northwest Coast. We can't leave totem poles without looking at shame poles. These were erected and in fact continue to be erected for purposes of social control, by shaming someone, to force them to meet their social obligations and behave like a good member of the community. And in particular, they're used to remind people that they may have not paid their debts or they have not maintained their responsibilities or their word. The most famous one of these would be the pole, and you're looking at a detail of it, depicting the former Secretary of State of the United States, William Seward. He received a feast, a potlatch, which we're going to talk about shortly, in 1869, given by a Tlingit chief. Now, when you are the guest at a potlatch, it is expected that you're going to return the favor, but Seward never did that. So after a considerable amount of time, he had his chance. The Northwest Coast group decided to erect a pole that shamed Seward by showing that he had not returned the favor. He'd not lived up to his social responsibility, and he had a debt which he failed to pay. Okay, well, apparently the Northwest Coast community is still waiting because that pole has long since decayed, but it has been replaced. It was replaced on more than one occasion. What we're looking at here is a replica, the third version of the original, which was put up on the 150th anniversary of the purchase of Alaska. Take that, Seward. And of course, Mr. Seward was responsible for that purchase while he was Secretary of State. If you take a look at the carving, you're going to see he's not a beautiful looking character. He's kind of frowning. He looks like maybe he's holding his breath. His ears are turned red, and his lips are also red as well. His nose seems to be flaring. His whole face is a little distorted. And it's meant to reveal embarrassment, that he knows he's being made fun of. He knows he's being shamed. He's also wearing a hat that's usually associated with potlatches. It is the same form that we saw with the crest hats earlier. And if you go to the top of the hat, you'll see rings that usually are considered to be, we're not sure, but usually are considered to be references to the potlatch. So this is an indication that Seward still needs to repay the people of the Northwest Coast for the great big bash potlatch that they held in his honor. This pole also, I think, is going to be continued. When this one decays, another will be put up in its place, because Seward also is associated with his refusal to acknowledge rights for the indigenous people to the land in Alaska. And at the end of the day, I think we have to recognize that Seward himself stands as a symbol for the United States government. So I think this pole is here to stay. This is just a view of workmanship that's being done today to create totem poles. So they're still being made. They're also still being erected. You can see that it is a community activity. You can also see, if you look over here at the regalia, that is very traditional, that this is an activity that would take place with ritual within the community. Today, the poles are being made with more modern equipment. I have images of workshops, and you would become an apprentice and learn from a master carver how to work on poles. Generally, we think of the carvers as male, but I've also included an image of Ellen Neal, and that's the figure located right here, in an earlier photograph showing that there are, in fact, women carvers for these poles as well, maintaining the tradition of the Northwest Coast. These are freestanding pieces of sculpture. They're very three-dimensional. The images do wrap around the pole. They're going to follow the contour of the tree, and as that happens, they're going to have very clear flowing lines. The forms themselves are going to end up being very rounded and swelling, and that too is characteristic of the masks that we're going to be looking at next. There's also an incredible symmetry to these, so we're sticking to the axis, essentially, of the tree. The designs are very complex, often as one form fuses into another. At the same time, they tend to be simplified and abstract, but with enough of the representational parts of the animal so that we can generally recognize which creature it is that we are looking at. These images also will be vividly colored, although some of the museum pieces, like the piece at Penn, over time has lost its painted surface.